Pendle Council, and if we've got anybody watching us on the YouTube channel, just to say that we're streaming this from a remote location. We think everything will be fine, but it just depends whether they put 10p in the broadband bandwidth to ensure a smooth streaming operation. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that. As I mentioned, this is a meeting of a Pendle Council meeting committee, and we've got to work to certain rules. No members of the public have given notice of an intention to speak tonight, so we don't have anybody on the call with that. The members of the committee, I'll ask to introduce themselves in a minute. Some are elected borough councillors and others are representatives from town or parish councils. So when they're introducing themselves, I'll ask them to make that distinction. Anybody that's an elected Pendle councillor is able to vote and participate fully. Other representatives, co-opted representatives, can participate but not vote. So if there are any votes and people aren't voting, that explains why. So can I ask people to introduce themselves and declare if they have any interest, which is item 1 on the agenda. My name is David Whip. I represent one of the wards in West Craven and I chair the meeting. So can I go to Marjorie Adams?
Good evening, Marjorie Adams, Pendle Councillor for Banalswick.
Thank you. Rosemary Carroll.
Rosemary Carroll, Ward Councillor for Airby Ward.
David Walker.
Good evening all. David Walker, Environmental Services Manager, Area Coordinator for West Craven Committee.
Neil Watson.
Good evening. I'm Neil Watson. I'm Pendle's Planning Manager.
Joanne Eccles.
Good evening. I'm a Committee Administrator at Pendle Council.
Ken Hartley.
Good evening, everybody. Ken Hartley, Pendle Councillor for Craven Ward, Barnoldswick.
Mike Goldthorpe.
Good evening, everybody. Mike Goldthorpe, Pendle Borough Councillor for Airby Ward.
Jennifer Purcell.
Good evening, everybody. Jennifer Purcell, Pendle Council for Craven Ward. Thank you.
Colin Carter.
Good evening, Colin Carter, Pendle Council of Airby Ward.
Thank you. Kevin Singleton. Kevin.
Yeah, good evening. Salterford Parish Council.
Thank you very much. Now then, Emma West.
Hi, Emma West, Barnoldswick Town Council.
I'm just coping with a cat at the moment. Right, Tom Whip.
Hi, I'm Tom Whip. I'm a councillor for Coates Ward.
And Peter Hampson.
Yeah, Peter Hampson, representing the Airby Town Council.
Thank you very much. Have I missed anybody out? No. In that case, I'll go on to the agenda. There weren't any declarations of interest. Can I report that I've agreed to take an urgent business item, which was regarding a request to fell trees on Airby Road, Salterford, near Klondike. And I'll take that when we deal with planning matters, which is, well, items 5 and 6. So if you can just bear that in mind. Could I ask people, if you're not speaking, just to put yourselves on mute, and then we can hear what's going on okay. And a cat has just sat on the agenda now, so I'm going to fight it off I think the next item is public question time, but I explained earlier on we don't have any members of the public here to address us under question time. So come on, shift. The next item is minutes of the last meeting. Would somebody move those as a correct record, please? Thank you, Tom.
I'll move them. Oh,
Thank you, Jennifer. Moved and seconded. Are there any errors or omissions that people can see? No. In that case, we'll take those as read. Item 4, police and community safety issues. Now, we don't have a representative of the police with us this evening. They did, however, submit details of recorded crimes. Recorded crimes, etc., which were emailed round to people. Oh God, it's not going to. I'm sorry about this. Will you just go away? Go and sit on that one. Go on. Right. Is anybody able to put those up on screen? Tom, are you on that one? Can I ask if there's any comments or questions on the recorded crimes? Just while give Tom the opportunity to present those. So these are the numbers split down into different categories and different parts of West Craven, and the plus or minus is a difference to the same period last year. So that table there shows the numbers from this time last year. And going back to that one, you can see there that in terms of residential burglary, there were 2 in Earby. There weren't any commercial burglaries. Vehicle crime, there was a reduction of 4 from the same period last year. Equivalent numbers for the next 2 categories. Theft -7, criminal damage -2, and then all crime, which includes categories in addition to the ones that we've just run through, it says -42. And then ASB is antisocial behaviour, and the total there is +37. The figures in brackets indicate that that antisocial behaviour was related to COVID-19. So of the 63 total incidents, 32 of them were COVID-19 related. And then there's just a bit of explanation there about the hotspots that have been identified. Cavendish Street, Raynell Road in Craven Ward, Coates Avenue, Gisborne Road in Coates Ward, Salterford Road, Green End Avenue and Wentcliffe Drive in Earby Ward. So any comments or questions? I mean, we're not able to answer any questions, but we can forward them to the police for answers subsequently. Tom?
I would like to thank all the criminals for sticking to social distancing and not leaving their homes, apparently. I think it's great we're seeing a reduction in crime, although the increase in antisocial from COVID is obviously a concern. I would like to know if those COVID antisocial behaviours, whether they're parties or whether they're just minor infractions.
Okay. I think we can ask that of Joanne to request that information, and then that can be emailed round committee members if that's okay. Not sure that all criminals are stopping at home, unfortunately, but certainly there does seem to be some impact, and I think that's reflected across Lancashire Constabulary. I'm not sure about elsewhere in the country. Okay, can we pick up the second part of this, which is to comment on any community safety issues that people want to raise, and we can alert the police to those issues. Mike? Mike, you're on mute. You're still muted.
One of the downsides, Chairman, of 8 months of chemotherapy is I've lost the feeling in my fingertips, so you'll have to bear with me while we get to the mute button. Just a quickie on the comments about not all criminals have gone to bed early. You're quite right. A lot of scamming going on in the area, in particular in West Craven, I've noticed. Perhaps it's worthwhile if we could either get something out there again to the public in the safety aspect of it, but certainly ask our constabulary, what's happening in that particular area or trading standards. It is a worry that a lot of people are falling foul of these scams. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, I mean, the most despicable one that I've seen is where people have been receiving texts or emails purporting to be booking a vaccination, and when people click on the links, they're asked for personal details and sort of bank accounts and stuff like that. So it's either phishing, so there can be identity theft, or in some cases it's outright fraud where people are asked to pay over money. And just to emphasise that the NHS will contact people by phone or by letter, and communications, unsolicited communications by email or text are not official, and people just want to bin them. But there's lots of other scams going around as well, and people need to be aware of that. I know that this is an issue that communications teams across the county are alert to, and trading standards and the like are putting out warnings. I'll mention it to our comms team at Pendle to see if we can do anything further. Thank you very much for raising that. Are there any other issues that people want to pick up on? No. In that case, we'll move on to, well, I'll say the planning issues. In terms of planning applications, we haven't got any to consider. We have a report that there's no planning appeals outstanding as of 19th of January. I don't know whether that's changed since. I don't think it has. And then item 6, we've got the enforcement action, which we have a brief report there about the former Gospel Merchant Hall, which is still going back to court, but that might be some time. So at this point, I'm going to take the urgent item in terms of the trees on Airby Road, Salterford near Klondike. And last week, I got an email from the tree officer at Pendle Council, which in brief said that trees on the part of Airby Road where we put a footpath in behind the fence line on the field side of the fence sometime 1980s, 1990s, I would think. It was Councillor Tim Haig who was one of the people who were instrumental in that. There are 3 ash trees, and getting interrupted by my phone now. There were 3 ash trees, and he was saying that due to ash dieback and the like, he was proposing to remove those trees. And I said, well, I'd like to be able to discuss it at this meeting tonight. I know the parish council have discussed it, and some further information has been circulated, which details the inspection that was carried out and reported in October 2019, which identified that these needed to be kept an eye on. For a start, can I ask Neil if you want to supplement that information? Neil Watson.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I was just trying to unmute. Chair, I think you've explained it pretty well. Chairman, we have had. Sorry, you all stop there. Hopefully, I'm still live. Chairman, we've had complaints about branches, etc., falling off the trees. Spoke to Mr. Johnson about it, our tree officer, environment officer. They're getting to that stage where ash trees will shed branches anyway. But he's had a look at it, a couple of the contractors, and they confirmed that in their view there is ash dieback in there, and hence that's what led to the email that you had last week, Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognise that most of the ash trees in West Craven and Pendle and across the country are now suffering from ash dieback. My concern would be whether the condition of the trees has deteriorated to such an extent since 2019, when the recommendation from the consultants wasn't at that stage to remove them. So it's very difficult to tell during winter whether the extent of any dieback, and it struck me that looking at them at this time of year, without a very close inspection, going up on a cherry picker and looking at the growing tips, would sort of make any significant difference to what the position was. If we were looking at them in summer or into autumn, that might have perhaps given us a better clue, really. So, can I throw it open to the committee? Kevin, do you want to?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. Yes, you've covered everything there, David. Just a couple of points. I am concerned about TPOs in the Salterford area. It seems to be that despite having TPOs, there seems to be a quick getting shut of mature trees. When they are cut down, there's nothing up with them. You can't see any dead in the stem. You can't see any dead in the left bud. So I find it a problem. There doesn't seem to be anything where there's a follow-up where people have to replant trees. But these particular trees, the people who did the survey, and it's an excellent survey, recommended that the ivy were removed so they could have a better look at the trees. Now, regarding ash dieback, it concerns me where this is being used to fell any tree, because certainly the last May we had a really harsh frost and the valleys looked absolutely empty. The oaks didn't come out. They did come out and then they got nipped. The ash trees come out and they got nipped by frost, and I'm concerned that ash dieback is getting mixed up with the late frost. I lost all my apples last year to the frost with flowers. On that Klondike Hill, we've already lost trees illegally felled. The avenue involved is an absolute brilliant place for observing bats in summer months. And if we keep removing these mature trees, and I do know they have a finite lifestyle, and I do know that if it lands on someone, then it will be very, very, you know, it's a dangerous thing. It could be. So I am concerned, and I hope people look at the trees. I don't know how you can come to a conclusion. I've looked for fruiting bodies all year. I've never seen any fruiting bodies, which would be fungi around the roots that give it that there was some sort of decay. The indicators of rotter fungi, and I've not seen anything that says anything like that. But I would accept anybody who's an expert on trees with their view. So if you get somebody who could have a close look at the trees, I always feel with felling the trees, there was some hidden agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I've put up on screen the report that's been referred to, and I'm sorry, I've put up the wrong bit there. I thought it was G3.
I think it's G13, isn't it?
G2.
It's
T13.
G2.
It's T13, the individual horse chestnut, and G2. There we are. That's the G2, 3-number common ash. Tree contactor to sever ivy and clear from main stem to enable detailed inspection, to remove dead wood or above 50 millimeters diameter, and then consultant to re-inspect. My suggestion is that we ought to ask the county council, because I'm not quite clear, but I think these are highway trees. Ask the county council if their arborist could have a look at these, and I'm aware that the county council are very conservative in their assessments and risk averse, but in terms of the risk here, it's no different to what it was during the summer, when it would have been possible to make a better assessment. The bottom ash tree of the three is perhaps in worse condition, but that could be dealt with by crowning the tree and sort of bringing the branches back and give it a bit of longevity. And whether the top two need to be dealt with, question mark. There is a horse chestnut there which was planted back in the 1990s. I think that's the one that's identified as T13 in the report, and it has been suggested by the person who was a tree warden and planted that tree, that due to it being multi-stemmed and having inclusions, that it would be sensible to remove that one. So I think there's more question marks than answers at the moment, and that we ought really to be getting at least second opinions on this, and then we can make sensible judgments and do the right thing without putting people at risk. I've got several people indicating now. I'll bring Kevin back in for a start, and then the people in the order in which they indicated. Kevin.
Yeah, I agree with the horse chestnut. It does look poorly. I think it's got Bulgarian canker. It's bleeding, and it does look distressed and horrible. Can I also just ask that it's who pays the piper? If you're getting certain contractors in, then it's not. If you're getting tree contractors, it's work for a week or so if you're doing things like that. So it's not in their benefit to start saying, well, we can do this small pruning, this, that and t'other. I think they'd rather take on wholesale felling, and then they can sell the wood after. But that's perhaps being cynical. Thank you.
Thank you. Neil, I'll let the other councillors speak first, and I'll bring you in then. So I've got Mike next.
Thank you, Chairman. Bit of a disadvantage on this one because I only received the update on this today, 1:30, and I don't live on this machine. But thank you very much for making it aware to people on Facebook. That was useful, and I'm not being sarcastic there, Chairman. I think we should follow the route you're proposing, but maybe tidy this up a bit and ensure that there is nothing there that is an issue. I think it is too early to call, particularly as you look at most of the trees at the moment and the type of hard frost that's hitting them. But I think at the end of the day, that would be the best way forward. We are losing trees, particularly in Salterford, at a rapid rate of knots, I think, really. There's one or two disappeared from the other side of the road, and I know that's subject to another bit of work carried out by our excellent tree man, to say that. So yeah, I think we should just have a good close look at these trees, make certain they're okay. And at the moment, there doesn't appear to be any major changes since last time. And I think once they're gone, they're gone. Irrespective of planting new trees, whether they're heavy standards or whatever we decide, if we're going to replace them. But yes, I would certainly support that. And if there's money's issues there, well, let's look at that at the time and see what can be done between Parish Council and West Craven Area Committee. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Mike. Ken.
Thank you, Chairman. As most of you probably know, I grew up with those trees. They were mature trees when I used to go past them every day to school in the late 1940s. They are beginning to show signs of distress now, but I support wholeheartedly a delay. Like you say, middle of winter is a difficult time to assess things like ash dieback. I don't think there's anything lost in the sense that we've had a very heavy wet snowfall today. If any of the major limbs were in danger, then today might have proved that they were beyond stress limits. In the next week, before any action could possibly take place, we're due for more heavy snowfall. And if they survive that, then they'll certainly survive into the late spring, which will be a far better indication of the true state of those trees. I agree with the philosophy of approaching others for another opinion on this, and I would suggest that we delay any kind of drastic decision making on those trees for the next 3 months at least. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like, I agree with what everybody's saying. Now, we could do with a second opinion, and like you said, David, we could ask Lancashire County Council for their opinion. Let's get a second, because those trees could be on their land or they've put them there or whatever, but I think another opinion would be far better. And also, you don't inspect trees in this time of year anyway, but I do believe in saving trees because down where we live, we lost some beautiful trees and it's very upsetting to see them go. But I would suggest that Joanne writes on behalf of the West Craven area that we'd like an opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Neil, come back to you.
Chairman, just a couple of points there. Chairman, I agree with what Kevin said. I think contractors have vested interest, and clearly if they can get a week's work out of something, that they will do. But I just wanted to make the point that the inspection was undertaken by Lee Johnson, our officer, so he's no vested interest one way or the other. So the initial opinion came from him. So there hasn't been any kind of Machiavellian approach with that. Chairman, LCC normally rely on Lee, to be honest with you, for second opinions. So I'm not certain what resource they would have, but quite happy for a second opinion, and if it reinforces Lee's, that's great. If not, then we can look at a different approach. But I'm quite happy to take that up with LCC directly if you wish, save Joanne writing.
Thank you. I mean, the survey that was carried out in 2019 was by the Boland Consultancy. Now, it doesn't appear that the recommendations in that report, it was Kevin pointed out that they haven't been adhered to. So, I mean, one option might be to look at carrying out that work and then getting them to reevaluate the position. But I'm happy to leave it with Neil to seek further advice from other people in the field. I've got David Walker wanted to come in. David?
Chair, yeah, we can take. I'll have a discussion with Lee, and we can take forward the actions. We are making some arrangements for the consultant to come back in and do some inspections on the high priority trees anyway. So maybe we can incorporate these trees into that inspection regime. So I'll have a chat with Lee, and we'll take it forward.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Can I ask if there are any further comments? If not, are we all generally in agreement with that course of action? Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and perhaps if we can have a report back at the next meeting or a future meeting when we've found out further information. Yeah. Right, moving swiftly on. Item 7 is capital programme, which we have a report, and we've got a bid from Salterford Village Hall for £1,000 towards improvements to the frontage of the hall. Rosemary?
Yeah, Chair, I'll move the recommendation that we give him £1,000.
Very good. More than happy to support that. Mike, you're in favour? Yeah. Are we all agreed on that? Anybody against? No, that's carried then. Thank you very much. Can we note the rest of the report? Are there any further issues that people want to raise? Nope. We will move on. I have to say that there's not a great deal on tonight's agenda, which people may or may not be grateful for. Item 8, reopening of Bonalswick and Earby town centres. Well, despite the best exhortations of Mr. Watson on this, I'm not sure that we've got any further concrete proposals to put forward. Some of this funding, the European funding, is time limited, has to be expended by 31st of March. At the current rate of knots, I can't see any significant reopening of town centres before we're well into March. So, frankly, given that all the stuff that we've suggested previously we've been knocked back on, and there's only a little bit of activity around the periphery that apparently is eligible to be carried out, I'm increasingly at a loss as to where we go with this. Neil.
Thank you, Chairman. Cone, as with West Craven, there are two sources of funding. There's the funding from Pendle Borough Council, which can be used more freely, and then you've got the European funding. Cone chose to use the Pendle Borough Council funding for a click and collect scheme, which wasn't eligible. We've just had a letter from DCLG saying that it is now eligible. So that's a possibility to look at some kind of click and collect process for retailers when the high street does open. So that's something that's emerged, and helpfully we haven't heard formally yet. The time period has been extended to the end of June, so that has to be formally confirmed. But so there are some more possibilities that have arisen in the last week or so.
That's very helpful. I mean, we were aware that there'd been some movement on some of the other suggestions that we'd initially put forward, in terms of, providing hand sanitizer and stuff like that. And it's very welcome if there is further relaxation. So, and if we get, and into June, then I think that gives an opportunity for some sensible discussions. Could I suggest that we have information outside the meeting so that we can discuss it prior to our March meeting, and then we can have a revised set of proposals that may or may not find favour. Mike, you want to come in?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just to say, well, you've taken the words out of my mouth, really. We needed that bit more information about it so we can make some clear decisions. But I would hope, the click and collect thing sounds very, very interesting indeed, particularly if we could tie this up with work that Pendle Borough has done in terms of trying to get the local businesses going. I think it does need a champion behind it, and it does need information getting out to the businesses in West Craven that this could well be a route forward once we've had a good close look at it. But it needs marketing, if you understand where I'm coming from, rather than just us discussing it. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, well, I mean, we do have a standing decision that we wanted to involve businesses. I think one of the problems that Tom and I have been, sort of discussing things with some town centre businesses, but we've got a handful of businesses that are operating currently, and the rest of them are biding the time. I mean, hopefully treading water and not sinking, but they're not really in a position where we can't actually go and speak to them and discuss matters. So we're going to have to do this virtually and hopefully feel our way. Could I just bring Tom in, because he did get some progress on an online offer, but I'm not sure that has been received enthusiastically, or if at all, really. Tom, do you want to just report on that?
Yeah, I mean, there hasn't been any progress with that. It kind of stalled when we saw the percentage fees that the app would get. I mean, I discussed it with David, and we both thought, bloody hell, what shop is going to want to go on there with that kind of margin?
Yeah, was it 15% that they were wanting?
I think it was 17%.
We just didn't feel that local businesses, could stand that hit on their margins to fund the flexibility of the app for placing orders, and I think we came to the conclusion that it didn't really suit places like Bonalswick and Earby. It maybe fitted in well with high margin retailers in big cities and the like. Tom, have you got anything further on that one? No. Mike, you want to come back?
Yeah, it is a problem. Clearly, when your negotiations are at the level we're talking about, you're not going to see much movement in an add-on, a further cost basis, and it is a difficult one without doubt. And of course, the margins are squeezed to such an extent the only alternative is the consumer pays more money, which is not where we want to be. But if there's any opportunity that Pendle can look at this in terms of a wider negotiation and being able to get an app delivery at an acceptable level, 15-17% is not unusual as a starting point, but you can achieve 8s and 10s if the volume's there. But people ain't going to do this for nothing. So it is a possibility if we could plug into a wider availability on that one, and I think it's one that perhaps, Chairman, you could pursue back at the at HQ and see if there is any opportunities there. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, so continue to discuss this outside the meeting. Seize any opportunities that we can. I mean, we don't have to come back to this meeting to get approvals, but in any event, we will have a report on the next agenda, and hopefully be in a position where we're already taking things forward, or can approve taking things forward. Is that okay? Yeah. Thank you very much. All right, item 9, items for the discussion, and I put on the agenda winter gritting because we have our perennial problems that the gritting of secondary routes is woefully inadequate. We don't get the sort of treatment that is necessary, and we find places like I mean, in Earby, Alder Hill Street, which is on a secondary gritting route, should be done. Dockcliffe Road in Kelbrook, where again it should be done. York Fields in Bonalswick, Raynell Crescent in Bonalswick, where we've got 2 care homes, so ambulances need to have ready access, and several others where they're all on secondary gritting routes, and when you ask the county council, they say, well, we haven't got the drivers to do it. A further problem is refilling of grit bins, where we've got grit bins that have been emptied, and the county council don't seem to recognise that we tend to get hit by bad weather, and not including what we've had today, but going back to the last spell, West Craven was quite badly affected, but you got to Colne, you got to Nelson and Burnley, and there wasn't anything. And indeed, even within West Craven, there was less in Salterford than there was when you got up the road into Bonalswick. So the county council don't seem to recognise that there ought to be more attention in the areas that need greater attention because of the climate and the snowfall and the ice that we've had. And then you've got Mr. Watson and his Murray bin teams trying to get round in the ice and everything else, and that's all falling behind. So I do think that we ought to be, as a West Craven Area Committee, part of Pendle Council, sending strong missives to LCC and saying, look, these are issues that need to be taken seriously. We don't know whether it's going to come about, but the 7-day projections, or some of the 7-day projections, are giving us pretty severe weather for next week. We're looking at very low temperatures, prolonged low temperatures, and possibly very great deal of snowfall. So, we might be looking at one of the events that comes along every 20 or 30 years, and it's something that probably won't just affect us, but if we can be prepared for that as best we can, then at least we'll be in a position, and residents will be in a position where they can do things for themselves. I've got 2 people indicating to speak so far. Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I mean, this part of the world is unique. I mean, it has a microclimate, even a matter of miles away, but it's the Pennine effect, as we all know. And if there's going to be snow, we'll get it round our necks in certain parts of Ban Alswick and Earby and Kelbrook. I've got to say that there are issues on secondary routes. Having said that, one of the benefits of being where I am is I can say that the primary routes are being, on average, we get 2 trips a day across Earby, early morning and late night when it's forecasted badly, and at least 1 trip over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks through the cold weather. The problem is, you can see them going up over the tops there, at Stony Bank, and they come up this side as well. The problem is there are a number of areas in our patch, West Craven, that do need that extra bit of attention. And one of the things that we have in, be careful what I say, but we've got quite an aged population in Earby. We've got several locations where we have protected housing, which are thankfully and the main on the primary routes. But their areas themselves, pavements and places like that, certainly need treating. We've over 5 locations in Earby, and considerable amount of the residents over the age of 80. And I've been delved into the details of vaccination. So yes, we do need to raise this, the continuous issues of places that are missed. I think it's also worrying. I think we had this problem before, Chairman, over the Together housing group locations don't seem to be doing their bit in terms of looking after the residents and ensuring the areas around them are gritted. And I think 2-3 years ago, this committee made that point strongly when the bins started disappearing. I think, without doubt, filling the grit bins is important. Revisiting locations of these grit bins, I think, is vital as well. So, yes, there are parts of West Craven that are missing out, but the drivers and what have you are doing their job in terms of where they're going and being sent, I guess. But I would support the need to get an urgent communication through, because this weather isn't going to ease in the foreseeable future. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Rosemary.
Yes, Chair. I can only reiterate what Mark has said. My main concern is the footpaths in Earby, especially where Housing Pendle have their houses for the elderly, Valley Gardens, Linden Road, Wentcliffe Bungalows, especially Valley Gardens, where you've got to go over a little bridge. I think something needs to be looked at in where they are gritted, because they're not being done. And if you live on Valley Gardens and it snows or it's icy, you can't get out of your house. So I think all these issues do need looking at, especially the footpaths, not just the roads.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I should point out that the backdrop that I've got is this morning's conditions out of our window, and I make a point of whenever we have the snow or ice, I use the backdrop. I used it at the county council meetings. I was at the county council meeting this morning, and make the point that that is today's conditions. So it drives home the fact that we will have snow on the ground and other people will have green fields. So I think it is important that we make representations as strong as we can through whatever channels we can to try and get better action from the relevant bodies. So are we all agreed that that's what we want to do? Yeah, good. And we're including together housing in that resolution. Thank you. Now we've got an item which is about outstanding items, so we're noting that. Our next item, unfortunately, is exclusion of the public and the press. This is because we have exempt items because the nature of the business reveals identity of individuals. So we're going to have to close the live stream down now. Can I thank anybody that's been watching? I'm going to bring Tom in before we do that, though. Tom.
Thank you, Chair. I want to once again stress my the disappointment at the sort of the look on this, because I mean a lot of them planning enforcement, the planning applications were public, the records of them are public. You can look up addresses of past planning applications, and so therefore if you break those planning applications, is that not a public concern? And of course it is. It just boggles my mind, especially the ones which aren't to do with any individual. There's no laws against talking about the address of a company. Companies are not a part of GDPR. They're not personal identifiable information. And therefore, if it's an address of a company, why should this be in the excluded press and public part of the meeting? And I just think we need to continue making that point, and if it means making representations to Parliament, I think we should do it.
Okay. In the meantime, can we make representations to the powers that be at Pendle Council and ask that this is once again discussed by the management team and the views of the area committee, if people are agreed on that, are made known as forcefully as possible. Yeah? Neil?
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think management team will disagree with you, to be honest. I think we all are of a view that these matters don't go back to individuals, and I think we disagree probably with what the law is, but we've even had Information Commissioner's decisions. Councillor Tom Whip has said that companies aren't subject to GDPR, but they can be as well. We've had a decision last year on a case. So I will use the word because I'm quite, as bonkers as this is, I'm afraid management team would agree with you, but we are where we are in terms of what the law says, and until that's changed, I don't think we'll be changing it. The advice we give to members and committees.
Okay, well, in that case, I'll supplement what I suggested we did in terms of, making representations to say that we ask that this is an issue discussed at Policy and Resources with a view to making those our views known to government, and ask that the relevant legislation is amended so that we don't have this nonsense. Mike, you indicated, then I've got Tom coming back in again.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I must admit I totally agree with Tom's comments. In fact, I'm on record for when all this began of saying how silly it was going to be before we got into our virtual meetings. I totally agree on this one. I think we need to find a way through. I have sent representations of it way back about the implementation of this. Discussions with Philip Marsdale have been long and interesting. I'm wondering whether this is anything we can take advantage of Brexit to a degree. I don't know, but certainly we should pursue every possible opportunity as long as people's identity is where it is there, guarded. Then I don't see anything wrong with pursuing this with vigour, and totally agree with Neil Watson's comments, just in case he gets into trouble for me.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. I'm yet to see a silver lining from Brexit, so if there is one, I'll be delighted. We are going to exclude press and public this evening. I'm not suggesting that we go against the advice of our officers, and I think we'd jeopardise the position of Pendle Council if we did so. Tom.
Thanks, Chair. I would like to just make clear that, overall, I agree with what GDPR is put out for. I think it's a good thing for individuals, but in terms of planning, the history of planning is public knowledge. Why isn't the present? And, just stress that point.
Okay, thank you. Rosemary.
Hi. I would just like to move on to North Block Wardle Stories.
No, we're not moving on. We're moving on until
when we do.
We've excluded press and public.
All right.
So
okay.
We're having a discussion
we've already done that.
About our. Well, we haven't concluded that as yet. I thought you wanted to speak about that issue. Do you want to speak about that issue?
No.
Right. Okay, let's put this particular aspect to bed. Are people content then that we ask Police and Resources to look at this with the view to making representation to Government and Parliament to get rid of this nonsense? Is the committee agreeable to that?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Anybody disagree? No. Right. So we will now exclude press and public very regretfully. Thank you to anybody that's been watching us on YouTube, either live or in the future, and we'll go on to discuss this. Could I just check that live stream has gone?